Comments. Just a procedural note, the 2023 Executive Board meetings will be held in person with a virtual option. We do have some that's logged in. We encourage you to be with us in person. It's more importantly, have your participation regardless of the format. To facilitate virtual participation, all delegates attending virtually and in person are asked to state their name before making a motion, state your name before a second, state your name while voting or posing a question or comment, please. So the rest of you have a record of that. Because we have delegates attending both in person remotely, I'd like the clerk to call the roll at the beginning of the meeting so everyone is aware of who's present. We can establish a quorum. Names will be called in alphabetical order by last name. I'll now ask the rest to call the roll, please.
Dante Anderson.
Present.
Bobby Compton.
Yes.
Patty Crump.
Present remotely.
Jamie Lineberger.
Here.
Evan Demi. Martha Sue Hall. Present. Brian Helms.
Present.
Aaron Hinnett.
Here.
Jean Houck. Bob Hovis. Corinthia Lewis Lemon. Tony Long.
Here.
Jay McCosh.
Here.
Jerry Oxer. Elaine Powell. Sean Rush.
Here.
David Scholl.
Here.
Ben Shu. Jennifer Stepp.
Present.
Jennifer T. Present. Jarvis Woodburn.
Present. You do have a quorum. Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone. Nice crowd. Thank you. Just about everybody's here. Thank you so much. Oh, on a moment of silence, just going to mention something. It's a heavy heart in the city of Bessemer City. Announced the passing of City Council Member Kay McCaffin. Ms. McCaffin served more than 27 years on the Bessemer City Council and in many other community-based organizations and initiatives that better Bessemer City. Mrs. McCaffin was wholeheartedly committed to the success of Bessemer City and her work as a Centralina delegate. She always supported doing the right thing. She was fully committed to serving others in everything she did. So along with that, if you'll let's pause for a moment of silence. Thank you. Under the consent agenda, we have 4 items today. The approval of the September 13th, 2023 Executive Board meeting, a regional infrastructure accelerator grant. Centralina applied for this grant back in May, was notified in mid-October. We have received the grant, but in a lesser amount than requested. And funding will be used to support the Connect Beyond implementation. And additional information is in your packet. The board is asked to approve the acceptance of the funds and authorize the executive director to enter into a cooperative grant agreement with U.S. Department of Transportation. Also, there's the FY 2024 budget amendment and the 2024 board calendar approval. Please note the February meeting has been changed from typically the second Wednesday of the month to the third Wednesday due to Valentine's Day holiday. And that was mentioned at our 50th anniversary that we had. Any comments on the consent agenda?
Martha Sue Hall, move approval.
Tony Long, second.
We have a motion to consent agenda and agenda is presented. We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. For your attention, item 5, please, in your agenda. Item 5 is Centralina Spotlight, Housing and CUD Success Story. Since the beginning of the year, this is my favorite part. Since the beginning of the year, Centralina's highlighted the Department of Success by sharing with us a brief portrait of work that shares a story. Today, we'll hear from Centralina's Community Economic Development Team as they highlight local government's housing supportive services. Christina Dax is here.
It's going to go on its own video.
This month, our spotlight is on housing preservation and home rehabilitation services, led by our Centralina Community Economic Development Team. This work supports our organization's collective effort to build local government capacity, efficiency, and innovation in service to Centralina communities and the region. The population of adults over the age of 65 is the fastest growing age cohort in the Centralina region, with an increase in 58% between 2010 and 2021, and an anticipated increase of 65% between 2021 and 2041. These data trends point to the increased need for supportive services for older adults in the region, specifically services to bolster aging in place. Through state and federal funding, Centralina Community Economic Development supports housing preservation through administering housing programs for low and moderate income families in the region that address health, safety, and accessibility issues in a person's home. Some examples of provided services include electrical, plumbing, and HVAC system repairs, installing insulation, and accessibility upgrades, such as wheelchair ramps and grab bar installation in bathrooms. Centralina recently assisted Stanley County and Lincoln County with reviewing local housing repair applications to determine eligible candidates for assistance. Through state and federal funding, a total of 20 elderly, low and moderate income families received essential housing repairs that allowed them the opportunity to safely remain in their homes. The before and after photos in this presentation show repairs to a home in Lincoln County. The front steps and walkway of the home, along with the front and rear decks of the home, were repaired to allow the residents the ability to enter, exit, and relax outside their home safely. As the housing needs of this population continues to grow in our region, Centralina's Community Economic Development Team will continue to partner with communities in need and adapt program offerings to best assist residents with essential housing rehabilitation needs. If you'd like more information on how Centralina's Community Economic Development Team can help with your community's needs, please reach out to Department Director Christina Danis.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Right.
Short, sweet, and to the point.
Yes, thank
Very
you.
good.
Melissa.
Yeah. Okay, Lincoln and Stanley County, any you add any of that since your county? The work that was done.
Typically, I'll give an overview. The housing, they just upped it. It used to be 75,000 per unit approved for LMI in a community. It's up to 95,000 with administration cost and soft cost and hard cost to do this work, and it takes about 3 years to do it. It is a very publicly vetted process, so it takes a housing committee to form. Everything happens with transparency in the community as to who is selected, who is eligible. There are title searches done and there are inspections done prior to for eligibility and closeout to make sure that the work's been done properly and safely. So it's a program that comes from the state through the NC Commerce and the North Carolina Housing Finance Administration. And it is the state's community development block grant funds that they receive from HUD that they do a pass-through for this program, which is an annual program. It runs for 3 years, and you are not eligible within those 3 years. You must complete it 3 years and then have a waiting period before you can become eligible again for that community.
During that period, because it's HUD, is there training or counseling or anything that you have to go through to receive that money?
That's a great question. So there are, as with any federal grant or any state grant pass-through of those federal grants, there's a lot of bureaucracy and paperwork. And there's a lot of regulations to be required regarding environmental reviews, lead reviews, asbestos reviews, historic reviews, floodplain reviews. All of that happens as part of this process. Centralina does that work for you at the town as part of our administration of this grant, but it is done in partnership. It is not enough funds to do it on your own. So we partner typically with the town's legal team and their building construction team and the town clerk or administrator, as well as the board, to ensure that the housing committee and the public facing part are well documented and support them. So we sort of bolster the town through this process, but it is a partnership. But the lion's share of the nitty gritty is done by Centralina to make sure you're compliant.
That sounds time consuming, but with Centralina doing it, does that speed the process up? Or is there any change in that?
Another great question. So, yes and no. Yes, because you may not, Centralina would ensure that you as a local government unit didn't miss a deadline or a deliverable that could delay the release of funds or the timing of those funds. But the program has its own timing. And some of the most difficult part of the program timing is to get contractors to bid on these projects, show up and do the work as required for the bid specs that were initiated. So it is defined by 3 years and certain grant timeframes, and then you need to sometimes wait and go out to bid because you need 3 bids under a federal pass-through dollar program. So you need 3 viable bids from a contractor to do this work. And sometimes you have to go out to bid multiple times to get that to work. So the timing of it is delayed, and those bids can take at any time to 30 to 90 days to 120 days on the timing that individual residents in your community are going to be delayed. So it's important to have meetings with them regularly to update this. And it's also important to foster good relationships with contractors.
Is there any information on the wall out here? There's brochures for each department here. You have one out there?
We do, and we have a list of contractors that we work with,
Anybody
that we
here
vetted.
wants to grab that on the way out? Because that's
Thank
great
you.
information. I think it-
Yes, there
that
is
affects
some
all of
information.
our areas that we represent.
And of course, available for questions, or if you have some questions about contractors in your area, or you know of contractors that you would like to bring into the program, please feel free to share them.
Bobby,
Question.
No, go ahead. I'll yield to whoever's.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Brian Helms, Union County Board of Commissioners. This list of contractors, would it be possible to get that emailed to those of us that are joining remotely?
Yes, well, I'll make sure that Ms. Narissa Claiborne sends it out as part of a follow-up to this meeting to all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. I'm glad. Anybody else remotely have a question or comment? Ms. Claiborne could assist you with here. And then Ms. Dance. Very good. That's great. Perfect. Martha Sue Hall.
Just for many years, there's been federal money with community development, many years. And then there was a dry period in here where they didn't have CDBG money. And I'm just showing my oldness now, so Jarvis, don't you agree with me? But that's right. And for years, the 2 things that I would say is that cities ended up getting some of that money versus counties, okay? Because some cities have housing authorities, some cities, counties are not necessarily doing that. I don't want anything else to worry about, but is there a reason that, is it going to counties now versus going to cities? Because I heard you mention or say that you deal with the cities or dealing with the towns, but in this case, we're only dealing with 2 counties. So are there cities out there too?
That's a great question, and I'm going to try to answer it as best I can.
Okay,
If you are a city of over 50,000 in population or a county of over 200,000 in population, and you have decided to go to Community Development Block Grant Entitlement, that's the annual program,
Right.
then you are coming through an entitlement pipeline of funding. And that is direct to you as a county and direct to you as a city once you meet the threshold as an urban county or an urban city. If you choose not to, or you do not meet that threshold in population, you are coming through the state's pass-through for those CDBG funds. And that means that you are eligible if you are a local government unit recognized by the state, if you are an unincorporated area or ETJ area, you are coming in under the county. So the county acts as your land use oversight and your state authorized representative for those areas where they have not formally incorporated.
Very good.
Okay.
very good. That is I understand that completely. And we have to realize that within our region, there are not many counties with over 200,000 and very few cities with over 50. So most of them get it. Okay, thank you very much. I would just offer to you all, just from having been around CDBG for many years, to make sure that if the money is spent, that things are closed out, because there have been some local governments who many years after the project is finished, They never close, and I'm, as the auditors, as our, as our auditors, I would just say that make sure that's clean and closed out, because there are some folks that have not done that over the past years.
Correct, their clawback on the funds.
Thank you very much.
Christina Dennis, thank you so much.
Thank
You're great. Wonderful information. Y'all noticed Martha Sue Hall admitted she was all over drug Commissioner Woodburn in with that conversation. Okay. No motion with that. We use informational purposes only. It's great information, great questions, information in all brochures out
And we'll
there.
send out.
And then send by email to those virtually. So perfect, perfect. Okay. Bring your attention now to item number 6, the FY 23 audit report. I'll introduce Denise Strasser, Centralina's Finance Director, to the audit, and Dan Gordy, the partner of Cherry Pepper, will present the details of the audit report. Welcome.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for being here. So the FY. Okay, here we go. So I just wanted to do a quick summary of the financial statements with the revenues and the expenditures for FY 23. And originally was going to compare it to the prior years so you can see growth. But as you can see with the percentages and changes, it's been a little all over the place, although we have continued growth. The coronavirus outbreak came in 2020, and $50 million was released in stimulus packages. In FY 21, we received over $7 million from that. Most of it went through aging, of which we kept 1.5 million in-house, which you can see in FY 21, our revenues went way up. In 2022, the workforce came back into the office, normal operations and travel began again, and we also moved to a new location. During that year, we had a loss it was due to the move and the costs we incurred with the leasehold improvements out at the but if you took those costs away, we would have had a profit, small profit. Then FY 23, we have grown from the prior year, and we do have a profit positive revenues over expenditures of $36,856 this fiscal year, or this past fiscal year. So I just wanted to kind of go over that with you all, since you didn't have your financial statements earlier to look at. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Any questions for Ms. Strasser?
And then I'm going to introduce Dan Garrity. He's the partner with Cherry Beckart who has performed the audit, and he is going to do a presentation.
Good evening, and thank you for having me here today. I'm always take the opportunity to be able to speak to you all about the financial statements. Is always a good thing, good governance. So I appreciate you guys letting me speak here and letting me talk to you and share the results. So going right into it, first of all, I always like to just recognize internally our team to you all. You see me every year. You don't see everyone else here. You don't have pictures here, but you do see the names. Jennifer Moran is a manager who works on a couple other councils of government throughout the state of North Carolina with me. So we try to get that together and consolidate our teams so that they were seeing the same type of entities across the state. And then we had Shane Dougherty and Devin Eason, who was the senior in staff. So just to go right into the results of our audit, we perform our audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. We also perform our audit in accordance with government auditing standards. That's all in which to form an opinion to provide reasonable assurance that the financial statements are free from material misstatement. We also provide a compliance audit as it relates to your federal and state dollars. And this year we had tested the aging cluster, which included federal and state monies. We also tested the Workforce Investment Act. And then we also tested the ARPA dollars that were passed through to the council at the state level to you all, that you are helping with administrating the ARPA dollars across your counties and cities. We issued unmodified opinions in all cases. We issue an unmodified opinion on the financial statements and that on compliance of the federal and state monies spent during the year. And an unmodified opinion is a clean opinion, which is the highest level opinion we can give under our auditing standards. This slide just goes over what our responsibilities are, internal controls. We're looking at internal controls. We do not test the effectiveness of internal controls. We do test that they do exist and that they're in place. If we were to find anything, we may report something known as a material weakness or a significant deficiency. Material weakness being something that would be either found that is a material item or could be a material error if gone unchecked. And then a significant deficiency being one less than that, but still important enough to note to you all. And I can note that we had noted no deficiencies that were material weakness. Doesn't say anything about significant deficiencies because we can't outright say we had no significant deficiencies under our standards, but we didn't report any. We also are required to communicate to you any corrected or uncorrected misstatements. So this would be if we had any adjusting entries based on our audit that we found needed to be corrected by management to fairly present the financial statements. I'm happy to say we had no corrected or uncorrected, which basically means the information that was provided us by management is what you see in the financial statements and what you've been seeing year round in your internal financial statements. So no adjustments were required as part of our audit. Next few slides, I'm going to go fairly quickly through. These are all items that we are required to communicate to you all, but they're standard items we have every year. But if anyone has any questions, please feel free to stop me. First thing here is that you have significant accounting policies within your financial statements. You abide by those policies, which are in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. There was a new accounting standard related to subscriptions and IT-based technology arrangements. There were no arrangements that met the threshold to be required to be reported in the financial statement. So while it's adopted, there is nothing in the financial statements on that. In terms of related parties, we found no related party issues as part of our audit. Everything that was disclosed to us was what we found and nothing more, and no issues with any arm's length transactions. If we find something that we consider to be significant and unusual, significant being outside the normal, or unusual being outside the normal course of business, or different by the nature, timing, or size of the adjustment, we have to make you aware of that. We had no items that met that definition to be presented. As part of the audit, there are a number of items within your financial statements that are based on estimates, and those estimates are based on certain key inputs that are provided by management to specialists such as actuaries, or use internally with your software for depreciation of fixed assets and such. Those are the main estimates that we consider to be significant to the audit, being your allowance for doubtful accounts, depreciation expense, those assumptions that actuaries are using for your pension and OPEB, and the interest rates for leases, which is estimate based on the prevailing rates out there right now if you were to go out and acquire debt for a lease. And then we evaluated the key factors and made sure they were reasonable and consistent with previous years. Financial statements are neutral, clear, and consistent. There's no specific disclosure that I need to point out to you all. On our non-attest serves test side, independence is the cornerstone of our profession. We need to be independent of management, we need to be independent of the organization and everyone involved in the organization. And I can say that we were independent of the organization and we continue to be. We do provide some non-attest services, attest meaning audit services. So this would be anything non-audit service we provide. And this is something we provide to every local government, which is we have to fill out the data collection forms to submit to the federal government in terms of the federal money you spent and the results of our audit. This is reviewed by management and there's no issues with us doing that service. And I always like to point out here, if you remember from last year, that you all prepare your own financial statements, which is not always the case with a lot of local governments. A lot of CPAs, auditors, or outside other external parties draft their financial statements for the governments. So you have the added benefit of having CPA on staff that can draft the financial statements for you and provide them to us to then audit and not have to prepare as well. We had no difficulties encountered on the audit. We had no disagreements with management. We had no auditor consultations. This would be something internally that we had to consult with within our own firm. We had no items that were that. We received the signed management representation letter and issued our financial statements. yesterday as of November 7th. We had no management consultations. There was nothing that we became aware of that management was shopping for an opinion with outside accountants or auditors. There were no other findings or issues noted as part of our audit. No fraud or illegal acts. We're not aware of any fraud or illegal acts as part of our audit. And there was no going concern noted as it relates to Centralina's ability to continue. These paragraphs just talk about our responsibilities to some of the information that follows the notes of the financial statements. This requires supplementary information, which is your pension schedules. We do not audit that information. It's required, but not required to be audited. But we do look at it for consistency with the financial statements. And then there's other supplementary information such as your indirect cost rate calculation and some balance sheet schedules and year-over-year comparison schedules. We do look at that for consistency, but again, we provide just a limited opinion, not a full opinion on those schedules. These are the financial reporting standards that are coming up and coming in the next couple of years. 99 is what they call as omnibus. It's just basically a catch-all. If they have a number of things they need to change, they just kind of put them all into one and just make it. I don't think there's anything in there that would affect you all. 100 is just making a better definition of what constitutes an accounting change versus correction of an error. Nothing really there changing too much there, but just better defining what those are. And then 101 is compensated absence, which is not till 2025. So you do have a few years on that, but there's still a lot of questions around that in terms of what gets accrued in your compensated absence. Does more sick leave get accrued based on your policies? We'll be looking at that standard, looking at implementation guides as they come out and working with Centralina as we get closer to the implementation, make sure that that's being implemented correctly. With that, I open it up if anyone has any specific questions.
Questions, Mr. Gordy or Denise Strasser? We all get through all this. Some of it. Want to see all this question?
No, it's actually a comment to my fellow members of sitting around the table. It's just a reminder, a gentle reminder that the auditor and the audit itself is to us. And you did a good job of making that clear. But I feel like, again, we've got new folks that come on and sometimes they think that the audit is just an extension of the staff, and it's not. We actually, as the board, are the ones that are responsible for that. And I will tell you that at some point, I always wonder if we ought to go in, and this is not necessarily here, it's just something to think about when you take it home. When you hear the audit report, sometimes you might want to think about just staff leaving. I mean, sometimes so that he or they can feel like they can talk openly. Sometimes it's that bad, but thank God we're not that way. A couple of years ago, and remind me how long you've been doing this for us?
I think it was 2017 or 2018.
Was the first year. Then probably in 2017 or 18, we were not as financially sound as we are now.
Right.
Would that be a statement?
Yeah.
Professional is, I'm just a professional part here. In good standing right now, would you say?
Yeah.
That we are?
Yeah.
Is there a letter to, I have not looked through this until, it was just sent to us actually, but I didn't open it because I was driving. Is there a letter to us of your opinion? Is that in here that I've not seen?
So the opinion it should be up front following the table of contents.
Right, I see
And
a
that 3 pages.
3 pages. Okay.
Yeah. And then there's also a letter in the back. There's a couple letters in the back. One on Yellow Book, which is
Okay.
our responsibilities of internal controls,
Right,
which we found no issues with significant deficiencies or material weaknesses. Nothing's reported there.
Okay.
And then we have 2 other reports, one on federal and then one on the state compliance,
Okay.
which again, no findings in either one of those.
so findings internally or anything else?
Yep.
Thank you very much.
And you do have, following those reports, a schedule of finding and question costs, which is a really good schedule. It's 2 pages. And it really just summarizes everything for you. It says if you have an unmodified opinion, it says if you have a internal control issue or not. So everything's marked off there and it's really easier read than all those reports.
Right.
To really get a good summary on what the results were.
Well, and I guess that's in my years, I've always tried to go to that letter to begin with, because that just sort of narrows it down. Thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Kind of a different question here. You mentioned security, or I heard that word or something. Is that their IT department somehow in an audit, not necessarily yours, but an audit, to keep someone from hacking into the financials of the company, or to see if any improprieties in the company or
So while I'll let Denise speak to what it is, but for us, for an audit standpoint, we aren't providing an opinion on IT controls, but we do provide them with a questionnaire that asks certain questions about what they're doing. So we get a sense of what they're doing because we need to rely on the financial systems that are in place. So we do a couple tests and just looking over that, but we do provide an opinion over IT as a overall.
it's just.
I'll just add, Mr. Chairman, that we were assessed, we had a cybersecurity assessment by the North Carolina National Guard over the summer. So we have those, not findings, that's probably the wrong word in the context of the audit.
We don't want findings.
Recommendations that we're working on implementing this year.
Wow, great. I started to ask that question. It sounded kind of stupid, but I'm glad I did, because I mean, it was.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
great.
important.
Yeah, exactly.
It's important.
I always wondered about that, any hacking or any proprietors within, your system, anything happening or something like that.
It's happening all within us. And, I mean,
It's
So many of our local
Scary.
governments have been hacked. And
And
so
for anyone that's interested, it's a free service to local governments in the state of North Carolina. The National Guard will come in and do an assessment. So
Man, it's great.
takes a little time.
Good news.
They do it for free.
Denise Strasser, Dan Gordon, any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you both. Thank you. Thank you. Excellent.
I move that we approve the audit report and compliance report ending June 30th.
Okay, have a motion to approve, report ending June 30th, 2023, and audit report of independent auditor. Have a motion. Martha Studo, have a second.
Second.
Have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Very good. All right, then we'll move to agenda item number 7, the federal and state action agenda update and discussion. Board will receive an update on Centralina's federal and state government engagement activities, discuss potential focus for the North Carolina General Assembly short session. I'll call on Kelly Westman.
No, you're first.
I assume Leslie will,
She's coming up after.
Okay.
Kelly.
So the purpose of this update tonight really is to provide you with a bit of a recap on our state engagement activities over the past year. This was the first year of our Raleigh Relations Advocacy Agenda. So I want to do a little bit of review on that, and then also to get your feedback on an approach that we are proposing in terms of engagement and advocacy for the General Assembly's short session in 2020. So just a bit of a reminder or refresher, our state advocacy agenda is comprised of 3 categories. Funding for Centralina, and that's where we're seeking direct appropriations to support the work that we do. A big important part of that is relationship building. And so whenever there's an ask being made, whether it's funding or for policy, it's important to have champions to help to support that. The second category is monitoring. And that is where we track or react to state legislation. And then the third category is alignment with other organizations. That's where we track and support the priorities of our partners, such as the State Cog Association, the League, and the Association of County Commissioners. So this is the advocacy agenda, the priorities that you all approved as part of the agenda back in January. And then those categories that they each fall under. So I wanted to take a moment to just kind of do a little bit of year in review. So in terms of funding for Centralina, we requested a direct appropriation for Connect Beyond implementation in the state budget. Under the monitoring category, we monitored legislation related to some of those priorities that were just on the previous screen. So that included electric vehicles, stormwater management, taxing authority for municipalities. And then we also responded to requests from the board to track some legislation related to a couple of other areas, and that included land use planning and affordable housing. And then in terms of alignment with other organizations, we supported the State COG Association's funding request for funding to expand the long-term care ombudsman program. So in looking at these activities for this first year of our advocacy agenda, there were a couple of takeaways that we noted. One was the importance, reiterated the importance of relationship building, really having some champions on our side in the legislature. Another was that there's an opportunity to kind of take another look at our approach to monitoring and see some ways that we could make it beneficial both for our staff as well as for you all, our members as well. So in reflecting on that, we've come up with kind of a phased approach that we'd like to propose for the 2024 short session. So phase one would actually be now through the primaries, March 5th. And that would really be focused on planning. So we'd like to develop a plan for that continued relationship building those relationships, cultivating our champions. We'd like to review our monitoring approach and any areas of opportunity to improve that. And then we'll also continue tracking legislation related to those priorities that are in our advocacy agenda. Phase two would be where we would begin to implement the plans that we laid out in phase one. And that would actually happen after the primaries through the end of the short session. And that would include really continuing to actually take action to build those relationships, engage in those relationship building activities with members of the General Assembly. We'd also like to come back to this board with a request for input on our updated monitoring approach. And then we'll continue to track elections as well to see how those are panning out. And one additional activity that we could do during phase two that we would like to get the board's feedback on is some outreach to candidates, new candidates running for seats in the General Assembly to begin to build some awareness around the organization and our regional priorities. So I'll pause there because our ask really tonight is for feedback. 2 points of feedback. First would be on the spaced approach. And then secondly, direction on outreach to new candidates post primaries. Mr. Chairman, I'll pause there.
Jill, any questions regarding what you want discussion? Any questions? They're right into that.
No questions, just a comment. Jennifer Teague, Harrisburg.
Jennifer Teague.
I really want to applaud you guys because I know this board threw a couple curveballs when we were in the middle of some pretty heavy legislation that was affecting all of our municipalities. You guys really jumped in and were able to provide us some direction and feedback and really kind of a consensus that I don't know that we would have had if it weren't for this arena. So kudos to you guys for helping out with some of those. Look forward to, I'm sure that's not gonna be the last time we have to do that.
Thank you for that feedback.
Can I follow up on that?
Absolutely.
real quick? I appreciate that comment, Mayor, and I think that's one of the things that we want to do in reflecting on our monitoring approach. How much of it do we set out at the beginning of the session versus wait until the crossover so that we can be a little more nimble in responding to those requests? So that's one of the things we'll be seeking your feedback on.
Arrowhead and Kannapolis. Curious, in developing a plan for continued relationship building, have you identified holes in our plan where we don't have relationships that we might need to have relationships already? And if so, are there some of us that could help make that process better and more effective to build those relationships? Have you gone that far yet in the process?
I think that's part of what we'll be doing in this plan development phase. But one of the things that we would like to do, since 2024 is an election year, we'd like to really be strategic in the relationship building that we do. So building relationships with legislators who are on track to, if they're incumbents, on track to be reelected in the fall. But we'd also look to you all for any relationships that you have, any connections that you have, whether that's with incumbents or new candidates, that we can kind of work with you on continuing to build and foster those relationships.
Just a comment, Martha Sue, remember in our 9 counties that we have 40% of both chambers membership within our 9 counties. 40% of the Senate and 40% of the House come out, and that's a lot. That's a lot of people. That's a lot of power. That we ought to be able to get something out of that, we collectively. But just when I was first heard that probably 20 years ago, I thought, no, it can't be. It is. And just a comment there about starting, they can, even as folks are running, you know, I think maybe filing opens up December something and closes December 15th or 18th or whatever. We'll know who's running then. And we should go ahead and start it then. So thank you very much.
So in saying that, with the outreach to candidates, you mentioned wait after the primary, could just get that finalized person or persons.
Wait to see who has remained after the primaries.
I guess that's inform that person. Possible. Because after the election, I think many times we drop the ball on that, falls through the cracks. They get elected, they're in Raleigh, we come up, or our lobbyist Mr. Cartwell comes up, and well, who's that? You know, what's Centralina? Just not knowing.
But what happens, if I may, what happens after a general election in November, particularly for the North Carolina House and the Senate, is, you know, they're looking at January for swearing in, and there's only 2 months there. Well, a month of that's gone between Thanksgiving and Christmas, so that's just out of there. And then when they try to get their little time, and I mean little, they don't have a lot of time with the School of Government. You know, they do a little bit of what to expect 101, which is very little. So many of them go to Raleigh and have no idea what goes on in local government, none. And they've got those blinders on. So I think if we do our homework and do it after March, I just think that's the time to do it. So thank you very much.
Yeah, it's great information. Good, thank you, Kelly.
Thank you.
Okay, it's Leslie. Is Leslie on?
I'm here.
Okay, Leslie Masingo, the one and only from Strategics Consulting. Give her performance report June through August. Welcome, Leslie.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So on page 30, you have the performance report that you can review as part of your packet. Main thing is, you know, I don't go item by item, but just wanted to highlight for you a lot of the work working with the delegation, getting their staff at the 55th anniversary, working with the senator's office for the video that he sent and so forth, as well as tracking where the appropriation bills were going and whether we were going to see those done. the continuing resolution and threat of a government shutdown and what that would mean, and providing information to everyone in terms of how that may impact them if a shutdown did occur, as well as, of course, the speaker debate that we got through in October. So I'll pause briefly. I know you've got two performance reports. I believe I reported on the last one before, but it didn't receive a vote. And then I'll give you an opportunity to take a moment to look very quickly at page 30 for the new report in case we have any questions. And then I have a couple of real quick general Washington updates to give. But any questions about the performance report before I move on?
Any questions? Performance report?
Okay.
And then
So
go ahead.
the other items that I just wanted to briefly tell you about is that one of the promises of the new speaker, Speaker Johnson, was that he would return the bills to regular order. So they are starting to move, particularly on the House side, of course, under the speaker. They're moving the appropriation bills singular instead of in groups. On the Senate side, they're still putting together 2 or 3 at a time and doing a minibus. But on the House side, they are doing them individually. Nevertheless, even though things are moving forward, given the extreme differences between the House and Senate versions of these bills, there's absolutely no way they're going to make it through, get everything through and signed into law by November 17th, which is when the existing continuing resolution expires. So don't let that alarm you. We have had continuing resolutions more than the last decade, and on average, like 5 a year. That's been one of the complaints of members, is that is not regular order, and that has become the norm. And so they'd like to move away from that and get back to the regular order of individual bills. But it's going to take some time to resolve these differences. So they will have another continuing resolution. It will go through at least December. It could potentially go into January. There's even been a proposal to take it as far as April. The concern, of course, that we have is that there is, as the Fiscal Responsibility Act, anything that has not been signed into law that's still under a CR by the time they get to January 15th is subject to an automatic across the board 1% cut. However, those cuts would not go into effect until April 30th. So I believe the fact that they set up a January 15 and an April 15 as two possible CR deadlines is their way of trying to make sure that they would have some way to rescind that sequestration before those automatic cuts would take place. However, of course, we'll continue to monitor that and let y'all know if that changes. But that is a concern as they, continue to extend these current year funding levels under CRs instead of moving through with FY24. In addition to that, they have a series of bills that will expire. So they will need to either have a type of authorization CR, or at least sometimes it doesn't, they can let those expire and it doesn't affect them as long as the PROPS funds them. But there are 4 major pieces of legislation up for reauthorization that will likely go into the second session of Congress next year that would be of interest to Centralina. One being the Farm Bill, and in large part that has to do with the nutritional programs, and for the counties in particular, like SNAP requirement or SNAP program. And within that, the work requirements that are being debated that passes part of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, which was the deficit, raising the deficit or a debt ceiling bill. And so they've got some things that are holding that up. So there is some fighting going on over the Farm Bill. But then also what's also very important to Centralina is the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, EDA reauthorization, and naturally Older Americans Act. So we're working on all of those and tracking all of those in terms of making sure that they get through in time and can continue to receive the funding and some provisions within that are needed. And then finally, I wanted to highlight for you very quickly, certainly not enough time to go into great detail, and it's somewhat complicated, but I at least wanted to highlight for you that, the new congressional maps, as everybody knows, that were redrawn for the next election have been approved by the Assembly, not subject to the governor's veto. We've got a slide here that just shows you the overall map of 22 versus 24. So you have something to compare this to. And then this next slide, we've narrowed it down to the Centralina region. some of the things that I wanted to call to your attention and the main highlights of the changes is as a delegation as a whole, the new map would go from currently we have a 7-7 split between Democrats and Republicans. In the U.S. House of Representatives, that would likely change to a 10 Republican, 4 Democratic split. So there would be a shift in a positive column on the side of the Republicans. That's one major change. For the Centralina and several members of the delegation as a whole, there's a number of members that are in districts that are solid or likely Republican leaning. Some of those members, like Jeff Jackson, have already decided that they can't win that district. So they're announcing that they're running for other offices. Like in the case of Jeff Jackson, the congressman is now running for attorney general. Dan Bishop had already announced that he was running for attorney general. So those are 2 former U.S. House reps that are running for statewide office. And then you've got others more in the Raleigh region that have been basically drawn out. And then you've got some that have some real challenges, like Kathy Manning in the Greensboro area. And again, Congresswoman Fuchsie even, and Rep. Don Davis from the east side. So a lot of changes to the delegation. In the region specific to Centralina, we would go from 4 members to 5 members. So you'd actually pick up a seat. Again, we have the map drawn here, roughly drawn. The new maps have not gotten down to the street level yet, so we can't give you that level of detail, but based on what we know now, we've drawn the lines here to give you a sense of how that would change in terms of districts. It's really those that are running for those districts that make a difference. So as an example, in the redrawn 6th district, which is Kathy Manning out of Greensboro, she wants to run for reelection, but that moves over a little bit more now into your area, including there in Rowan County. And now Mark Walker, who was a former GOP rep that again came from the Greensboro area at the time he was in Congress, is dropping out of the governor's race to run for that 6th seat. So the end result will be that Centralina will have new members. The makeup of that membership in terms of split between Republicans and Democrats is also likely to change. And a lot more detail is coming up in the Capitol Corner article that will be published very soon. There'll be more detail about all of this in that article, but we wanted to highlight this for you. These maps, I assume, will also be part of that. And again, I'm always available at the end of the performance report as my contact information. I'm always available to anyone at any time. If you have any questions on anything to do with the federal government, please let me know. And I'll stop there for any further questions, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
As always, wow, Leslie, that's a great report. Any questions for Leslie Masingo on the 2 reports?
Martha Sue, the map, just the map redistricting. Leslie, what I see in front of me, and I don't have my glasses on, the peach color, which is currently 8, goes to Chapel Hill, Carolina blue. But I don't see a number on there designating. Does that state 8?
It's 8, yeah, it's like right in the corner. I think.
Was there an
Okay.
answer in the original?
Oh,
thing?
yeah, it is. It's way over.
That's fine.
In the. Yes,
Is it in
ma'am.
Anson County in that top corner?
Yeah.
Jarvis, you got your hide. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So no, a lot of gerrymander, did I use that word? So, I didn't mean to use that. Let me go back and take that away. We had some movement of counties in congressional districts, even in here, in these 9 counties, it appears.
Yeah.
We had some moving.
We have it in Gaston County every election cycle, seems like. Because we've had this be the fourth
Are you
representative.
the
in
redheaded
West-
stepchild, you get moved wherever they need you, is that right, Jen?
Pretty much, seems like.
Leslie J. McCosh, Gaston County, or McAdenville stating how they change their reelection.
And that is, I've heard that from a number of folks that it seems like their members are changing every election. And to be honest, obviously with the change from 7-7 split to 10-4, you're going to see challenges to this map. We just don't think that there's enough time for those to make it through a court system to affect the next elections. So, you know, I don't know the state as well as I know the federal, but my assumption is this map will stick for 24, and then there'll be challenges enough that it may be forced into being drawn again for the elections 2 years later. So this may not be the end of our redrawn districts.
Oh, of course not. Yeah, see the way it usually goes. Very aggravating, frustrating. Lastly, I'm on page 30, number 4, bullet 2, and I want to call in Christina Danis. If you heard her report earlier regarding this housing success story, Christina, if you have that, page 30, second bullet point, it mentions HUD's Thriving Communities programs. With the HUD thing, is that anything related to what you presented to us?
It is a different program under HUD that is related to Department of Transportation and the relationship between transportation and communities that need access to transportation because they're cost burdened with access to vehicles and household cost. So it is a separate program under HUD.
But that was some of the same criteria probably have to be met
Correct.
just as you
Typically.
spelled out on yours.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. It is under HUD. HUD will always serve low to moderate income or presumed beneficiaries under the national objective. And so any HUD program always rolls up to the national objective and the criteria of those beneficiaries that they serve. That's the same. However, the programmatic rolls out and who it ties to, that may be a programmatic nuance, but it always is the national objective and low to moderate income individuals and families.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions for Leslie while she's still on the line? Or we can go back to Kelly. Kelly's still in the room regarding her report. Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Now I'll ask for a motion to approve the strategic facility performance report for June through August and September through October. May I have a motion?
Errol Hennig, motion approved.
Second.
Second.
Second by Sean Rush. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Again, thank you, Leslie. Excellent. Okay, bring your attention to item number 8. Connect Beyond Advancing the Plan. Our man, Jason Wicker. Thank you.
All right. Jason Wager, I'm planning director here at Centralina. I think we've introduced ourselves before, but just wanted to mention, I'm really excited to have managed the Connect Beyond plan during that stage and now implementation. And a big part of implementation is those conversations around governance and funding. The Advancing the Plan, a committee, which is a subcommittee of the Centralina Board, has been meeting throughout the year. We've been bringing back some updates, and tonight really wanted to just recap some of the highlights and forecast to you a little bit about what we hope to bring back to you in early 2024, and also get some feedback from you. And as we talk, Mayor Hidden, as co-chair of this Advancing the Plan Committee, please interrupt and add anything. So wanted to mention right out of the gate that so much energy really developed throughout the year to dig in on some of these conversations. We ended up adding a couple more meetings just to go through the discussions. I think that's really notable. Folks saying, I want to add things to my calendar, very busy folks. I thought that was telling. The other thing I wanted to point out here is this intention to have something back to you at your January meeting. To really bring a culmination of what we discussed, where we've landed, what are we looking to do next? Where's the jumping off point based on all these discussions? So
I think, Jason, that's a rather ambitious goal to be able to do that. I mean, we have lots of things that we're still talking about, but to be able to do it and have it produced for you in January is going to be a real winning opportunity.
I appreciate you saying that. So in case it's not January, you heard it here first. But yeah, we really do want to strive and get to you at least a summary or some sort of information about that jumping off point for sure. Because a lot of work has been done, and we'll talk a little bit about that. See if I'm getting the right direction here. So as a reminder, we had these goals really about advising on those near-term opportunities for collaboration, and this really where our focus has been, this 1B, determining feasible options for a regional governance approach. Of course, we've also got interests and communications about Connect Beyond, and making sure that that information is getting out. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and collaborating to educate state lawmakers. Really, you can see that's coming full circle from some of the other items. And then just kind of a we are here type of slide to show the progression of discussions. And we've really found now in this October through December timeframe that we wanted to get to where we were making some recommendations. And I will say, we are continuing to also explore those collaboration approaches that we can go back into the summer and early fall. Those are continuing, but we are definitely moving in the right direction towards recommendations. Talk about a few things that have been discussed. So really through the discussions this year, we've come up with these building blocks for a regional governance conversation and a model for how we could proceed. Sort of, what are we doing? Those functions and responsibilities. What does that model, that arrangement look like? How do we set it up? The structure, forming that structure. And then ultimately, those funding options that can afford the region to do more. So not supplant what we already were receiving, but to do more, bring more funding to the region to meet our shared interests. First on the model, we've affectionately called this the jellyfish model. You can see why. There are just a lot of things, and we'll list a few more of those functions in just a minute. It's really about that rider experience, planning, coordination, all those things that if we could just, have a single app, a single fare, all of those sorts of activities, that's going to make the experience for someone trying to get from point A to B a lot more seamless. So what are those things that we can coordinate and be efficient on? At the same time, locally, there are operators and infrastructure that are able to handle what they do, been handling it, and can continue to handle that as needed locally. That's the model. A few more of those responsibilities, because that comes up, like, so what do you mean by what's part of that model? So everything from transit coordination, maybe shared marketing and branding. You kind of have the same information that is created. You don't have to create it 15 times over around the region. Transportation demand management program. We've talked a little bit about that. I realize that kind of terminology is very kind of planner, wonky language, but that's really about getting people where they are going, whether it be through commutes or other economic opportunities that could be accessed. What are those options? So educating folks on what are their options available, and then let's get you connected with those options. Whether it's, if you're already in a single occupancy vehicle or don't even have access to a single occupancy vehicle, how do we get you that information so you can maximize the resources? And then, of course, maximizing funding is another opportunity. As I really like to emphasize, this is about trying to access additional funds, not supplant what might already be coming through local MPOs and so forth. Moving through those building blocks, we just talked about, this is the pathways to formation. This will be a focus for our November committee meeting coming up next week. This slide does not do justice to all the effort and the conversation that has gone in to this topic. So I don't know, Mayor Hannon, would you like to-
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Under item number 1, just a debate and discussion that has occurred under item number 1 as to what is available to us and how is it best suited for us, and what does it mean that we can do if we choose Article 26 or Article 27 along the way. And I realize those are not meaningful to you right now, but they are meaningful to the committee because we have been really exhaustively looking at what does that mean, how does it mean, what kind of community do we have to be in order to be served by one or the other of those relationships, and what does it mean about growth and critically funding opportunities. So there's a tremendous amount of work just under item 1 that has already been digested and being and we've had great advisors and people who've been giving us ideas of how it's worked in other communities too. So that is item 1 while all the others are very important for existing and new legislation, we're really talking about item one that is going to really be the crux of how we form some kind of governance model.
Yeah, so just to add to that, those were the kind of the choices that boiled down to, but this wasn't the first thing we got to. We had to talk through the various options. What are we as local governments enabled and regional efforts collectively enabled to do? And that's where we got to, you've got some existing statutes and the way they're written, they might be written to fit certain areas of the state, may not be our area of the state. So how does that work? What if we went the route of amending that legislation? That might be an easier lift for legislators to consider. Or do we really need to just look at new legislation? So that's sort of the conversation and calculus that's taking place at this point. And again, this is all in this concept of a regional transportation authority structure that supports that jellyfish model. I think sometimes folks hear authority and there's a bit of a, what does that really mean? It's to support the model that we just talked about.
It's the best combination of each of us being able to have control of our units and our operations, but yet have some kind of umbrella that helps subsidize, work through, guide, direct along the way with the overview that would be a part of this governance model. So some of the folks were saying, I don't want to give up control of my system. How do I do that? How do I possibly? You don't have to under this arrangement. And I think that's been critical to buy in folks who wanted to be a part of it.
So this is really, I think, illustrating how this is a jumping off point, the next chapter, if you will, of the discussion. So versus some folks might have thought, oh, there will be a beginning and end to this year's discussion. We have progressed extensively. It's been a lot covered and we've learned a lot. At the same time, there's more to do. So we hope to come back with that touch point with the executive board. Really maybe expand that regional engagement, communications, who else needs to be brought into the discussion? How might you all help with that in terms of that engagement? Transit agency coordination, certainly very involved throughout the planning process. We continue to have staff level coordination, all kinds of working groups. Let's get this information to them and understand where they stand, what questions they have. Talked about communications, and then what are those activities legislatively that might need to get started? As we know, if you come to folks with an immediate out of the blue request without any background or context, that's maybe a non-starter. So what are those things that need to happen to get us there? So that's the forecast. Anything else, Mayor Hint, that you have? We realize we've got our agenda, we've got those meetings, we've got a lot of things we want to cover. Let's put that aside for a minute and just talking to you, being a bit outside of the meeting to meeting conversations, really wanted to ask you, well, what would you expect? What issues and questions are you expecting this committee will address? It's a bit of a testing of the communication and information that as members of the executive committee representing our region, gee whiz, I would have expected this group would have a little more information for us on, and that's what we're interested in hearing about, to see if there's anything we can be sure we're focusing in on the next couple of months.
Any questions or comments for Jason or Mary Hennett?
When we come back to you in January, is there anything that you would really be looking to hear, expecting to hear? Questions we would have addressed?
Remember, their goal is this conversation and action plan advances the implementation of the Connect Beyond Regional Mobility Plan. We've been working on it for quite some time. Jason's done a great job putting that together. Of course, Mayor Hennett, Mayor Lyles, and Charlotte did an excellent job co-chairing we're going to get a lot of good information here that Jason shares with us at our meetings. Yes, sir. David?
David Scholl. Question, in January, I'd like to hear a whole lot more of the, where we are with funding. There's a whole lot of planning going on, but without any sources or moving toward getting sources lined up. It's maybe forgotten.
That's probably a great question, because I think when you talk about any kind of mobility plan, that's the first thing that comes up.
It is.
How much dollar signs?
And there's changes coming up in Raleigh that may or may not affect the direction of the General Assembly. So bring us up to speed, if you would, on that then at the end of January. You don't have to give us anything now, but then. Good.
David, if I could respond to that, I think you may find that there is a tremendous amount of opportunity in the report to understand finance. For example, if you said, can we have $5 million a year for this program? What could $5 million a year do for you? What could it produce for you in order to accomplish this? If you said, there's no way we're gonna be able to get 5 million, can we do it with 2 million? Or what could we do with 2? And as a result of that, I think you're gonna see all kinds of choices that you could say, that makes sense to us. We could do those things if we could find 5 million, and we know that there are some grants and other things that can provide that kind of funding. Or under the previous slide, the kind of decision we make about ourselves as to how we're going to be that government structure may give you some ideas of where the funding is going to have to come from.
I think what I'm more looking at is the light rail option of the mobility program or mobility meetings agenda, which is billions of dollars. And that's not, without that coming, light rail heading my direction through Stallings, possibly Indian Trail is not going to happen. Without it, it's not going to go north, further north. I'm not going to connect Gaston County. So that's what I'd like to, where are we at with the big $5 million is like, well, it's nice, but it's not going to do a whole lot. It's not going to buy that much pavement either, if that's an option. But I don't want us, and I think that there's been a mentality that, well, we can just pave the roads, add another lane. And I don't want to end up like the Katy Freeway with 25 plus lanes of traffic. I want to be like Atlanta with, I don't know, 10 or 15 lanes. Anyhow, that's in January, maybe if you can bring us up to speed with that.
Jay McCosh. Several years ago, we sat, and Jennifer Martin was here. She was mayor, and she brought up this great mobility plan that actually came out of Denver, and I think it was called The Plan. And I don't know if you're familiar with it or not, but anyway, it was formulated years ago, and it was something that they finally got implemented. And she said, if we laid that plan, and a lot of it was light rail, and she said, if we laid that plan over our area and the Charlotte area, that it would go all the way to Lincolnton. And her caution was, she said, because we can't just keep expanding roadways. And like you said, we can't keep adding lanes. She just said, and I know that when we were talking to Congressman Jackson, Jeff Jackson, and that last meeting, they were saying Gaston County needs the third bridge, third crossover, the Catawba crossing, which we desperately need. And she was very much in favor of that. And she said, we just need to make sure that in that, we need to make room to make sure there's room for light rail for the future, because if you don't, and then this is an afterthought, where are you going to put it if you don't plan for it? And stations along the way. So anyway, I don't know if that plan or anything that had ever been brought back up in your planning of looking at this, because evidently the plan has been copied by many cities around the country because it was so good.
We have our Connect Beyond plan
Okay, yeah.
that we wrapped up last year, 2 years ago.
21.
I lost my sense time. But it does, and it gives us that flexibility. I think one of the advantages of the Connect Beyond plan is that it does show transportation connections out to some of our counties, but it doesn't say what mode. Because light rail is extremely expensive, it requires right of way, and long-term planning, but we can get bus rapid transit out to some of our communities really fast too. So we're trying to build in that flexibility to be able to do things efficiently and while keeping those long-term visions. And I think that's what we're doing in the committee, is trying to figure out how do we pay for some of those rider experiences. Because at the end of the day, we can want and wish all we want in terms of infrastructure, but unless we make it safe, convenient, and reliable, people aren't going to take it. And that's like a lot of the work that we're talking about at the committee level, is the way to plan for that reliability and safety and excitement for people wanting to see.
Any further questions or comments for the next meeting for Jason to do? Again, many thanks to Mayor Hennett and all your work with this, working with Mayor Lyles and Jason, of course, you and all the work you've been doing over a long time. That's great. We will receive that as information. The next agenda item number 9, is nominating committee formation. I'll call on, let's see. Yeah, the last item of the evening, Geraldine provided an overview of the nominating committee, which worked to identify the 2024 slate of nominees for the offices of Chair, Vice Chair, Secretary, and Treasurer. Our Executive Director will present this.
Thank you, sir. As per the bylaws, the executive board has the responsibility to form a nominating committee. Tonight is the night to do so. So we had shared with you information at the September meeting. We put out a call for volunteers over the fall. Mayor Pro Tem Hall talked at our 55th about it. So we do have 3 individuals tonight that we'll put forward for that committee. But before I get to that, just a quick overview of the process and next steps for the officer elections. So after the nominating committee is formed this evening, we will continue to share information to all delegates regarding the officer positions and roles. So we will resend the information out after this meeting with a form that if interested candidates would like to be considered to complete that form. And then the nominating committee will meet, we're eyeing the week of the 5th or the 11th of December to review those interested candidates. And then at the January 10th executive board meeting, the committee will present a recommendation to the executive board for awareness, not official approval. That will be another moment for additional candidates to be recognized from the floor. And then at the February 21st Board of Delegates meeting, we will again have the committee present full recommendation of the slate of candidates to the full board. Another opportunity for an open floor for candidates, and then we will have elections. So the new officers will be installed at that meeting and take up their positions for the March executive board meeting. So that's the flow. Okay, so just a reminder of our officers. We have a chair position. We have 1 interested candidate that has expressed their interest in that position. We have a vice chair that fulfills the role of the chair when the chair is not available. David Bosch is encumbered. We also have 3 candidates that have expressed interest in that position. We have the secretary, Commissioner Woodburn is the incumbent in that position, and the treasurer, Councilmember Corinthia Lewis Lemon of Mormon is the incumbent for that position as well. So we'll do another call, see if there are any interested candidates, and then we'll move all of those names forward to the committee for review and consideration and engagement with those interested candidates. That's my last slide. Here we go. So really appreciate Councilmember Balchuk from Indian Trail, who is a delegate. Mayor Pro Tem Rush, thank you for volunteering as well, and Mayor Pro Tem Paul from Albemarle. We appreciate all of you taking up this role. 3 committee members are required per the bylaws. So the motion before the board again is to establish the nominating committee. Oops, sorry, I have that back up there, to establish the nominating committee. Motion to.
Motion by Jennifer Teague. Second by Tony Long. Okay, and that motion will be to form the 2024 nominating committee composed of the 3 delegates. All in favor? Any opposed? Motion passes. Great. We never had this much trouble getting this. All right, so winding up. Staying right on time. Okay, any comments from the board and staff? If any members of the board have staff still here, any comments? Or members of staff?
Yes, 2 things. On that form that you send out to potential folks who want to be nominated or want to go, I think there are 3 things that we have missed in the past that we need to continue to put on that form. And one of them is how long they have been on this group, on the executive committee, their attendance, how long they've been on the executive, their attendance at executive board meetings. And that attendance is, I know that we have an opportunity to do it virtually, but how many, if they're virtual or not, so their attendance. And the last thing is where they are in their elected term. Where they are, is this the end, whatever, where they are in their term. I think that it is key. And I'll just talk with the other 2 committee members at the appropriate time, but I think before that form goes out, that needs to be included. And the other thing I want to say, and I hope I'm not stealing anybody's thunder. Tonight is Bobby's last night with us. And I think we all know that. And I don't know if Geraldine was going to say something or not, but I feel like, he pulls punches on me a lot, but we've been pulling punches on each other for a long, long time. And the one thing that, and this is coming straight from the heart and it's on my cuff, not on this piece of paper, is that Bobby stayed the course with this organization at a dang hard time when we couldn't even meet in public and that kind of thing. So I told him out in the hall, and I don't mind saying it right here. I know what it's like to run and win, and I know what it's like to run and lose. And you can't enjoy the winning until you've had that dang agony and kick in the face of not winning, not losing, but not winning. So I just appreciate it. Appreciate your leadership. Appreciate the tenacity and that you have used, and just excitement and continue. I mean, just everything. So, thank you. Somebody's thunder, but
It's a great transition.
And she didn't pay me any.
Well, I don't think we were prepared, but we did put this together very quickly. It's not an official proclamation because you would be issuing the proclamation as the chair. So it's a little odd, but it says, on behalf of the staff and board of delegates of Centralina Regional Council, we hereby recognize you for your outstanding leadership and contributions as the chairman of the Centralina board from 2019 to 2023. Your enthusiastic leadership, commitment to public service, and dedication to regional collaboration is a model for public officials and an inspiration to our region. Yes.
Martha Sue's never said anything nice about me.
Change my
clothes.
Thank you, so
I
much. Thank
brought
you,
her the
everybody.
chain.
Get a picture with Martha.
No,
Also, Jay, for social media.
She's been sweaty, I don't like that. No, I appreciate that. You know, I've been, 12 years as commissioner and before that, I worked, employed for the town for 31 years. And during that time, the town's been involved with Centralina since 1968, since the formation. And I went to work for the town in 1974. And just Centralina coming to Mooresville and us going to place with Centralina, I learned a lot about Centralina before I even got into the election deal. So this is my very favorite thing to do. And so I was talking to a couple other commissioners this morning. We had a meeting. And I listed every committee or commission that I belong to. And of course, this was at the top of the list. This is my most favorite thing. I've got local stuff also. This is my favorite thing because of the region and what I've learned from all y'all, over the years and past delegates and past executive board members. Man, you're all friends. I love you all. And of course, Centralina staff, I can't say enough about everybody here. All you guys here, everybody works back in the back. I just love you all.
Even me.
Yeah, even Martha Sue Hall. Sometimes I have to plug her up, that's all right. No, thank you, this has been wonderful, thank you. It's been a great ride. But I might not be done, someone else might come up. Who knows?
Linda Miller already has a position for you.
Yeah.
Aging advisory.
But no, I met Gerald, we were at the Speedway Club and somebody pointed out, Geraldine, here's our new executive director. So she was walking away. I think she got her food or something, was walking back, and I hustled over to her and introduced myself to her. And I said, I'll be working with you. We lost Ron Smith because he and I talked on the phone. He's in Statesville, so I'm in Howard County. So I knew him. I thought, this is going to be fun. So working with a neighbor. Then he leaves and bam, get somebody from Washington DC. I thought, oh my God, I'm in trouble. I don't know what to expect. I didn't know her. It's always easy when you know somebody. And so I went and introduced myself to her and bam, here we are. Ever since she's been in charge and I've been the chair, so I love working with these people. I always love working with these people. So, thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Okay. What about next year? Comments? Any comments from board or staff? Anybody else? Good. All right, comments from me. Yeah, I get emails from Centralina quite often. I just lost this one. I was going to share it with you. Y'all probably get emails too. And it's Centralina Learns. I read these things. Pretty cool. Aging sensitivity, nature-friendly communities. What are we talking about? Martha Sue and Stanley County, Albemarle right there. Anyway, it's things you can register on here. Y'all read them. It's pretty cool. And I read this stuff. And that's coming up on December the 5th. And artificial intelligence and ethics for planners. I think that sounds really cool. On Tuesday, December the 12th. And then lastly, final call for the Charlotte Aviation Academy. Jarvis took it, I've done it. Oh my gosh, it's one of the best things I've ever done. It's so cool. It's really the inside workings of the Charlotte Douglas Airport. And I'd like to do it again, but it's going to be tough. But anyway, it's really great doing that. So get these emails and scroll through it. It may not suit you, but it suits somebody in your local government, in your area planning or somebody. So I think it's really good that comes out and things that happen from that. Okay, the next meeting of the executive board will be Wednesday, January the 10th of 2024. It's an important meeting because the executive board will be asked to review FY 24-25 budget. I'm sure Denise will be here for that and recommend it for public hearing and approval at the February 21st Board of Delegates meeting. Also receive the nominating committee's recommendations that we just discussed for the candidates. A quorum is essential for this meeting. So please be on the lookout for meeting information from our administrative person right here. Because she'll send that out. And she might have to send that more than once to guarantee this. Yes, Martha Sue Hall.
Just Geraldine, if you will tell these folks about that metropolitan regional card that I sent you.
Oh, yes.
And I received something at home in my house that many of you may have received. It was a survey, an opportunity to take a survey with the metropolitan T somebody else. And when I looked at it, I said, wait a minute, We ought to be doing that. That's not, we don't need this. And part of it was if you take the survey and you do this, you get a gift card automatically, I mean, you know, and it shocked me. And so I called Geraldine and said, Geraldine, I offered to Geraldine that we at least needed to know what this was about. So, thank you.
So every 5 years, 4 years, our region's MPOs do a survey of households for travel and basically for transportation planning purposes. Because our region is by state for transportation planning, it's South Carolina, North Carolina DOT. So they're kind of, their logos are in the lead, if you will, when things are sent out, even though we are a partner in the process, but we are not leading it. It is something that's really important that our community members are completing, so we get accurate information to inform transportation planning in the region. So it's not that we're not involved, we're just, you know, our front and center and all the materials.
And I will tell you, because some of us probably scream regional government all the time. And then we get this and it's something that looks regional and we're not mentioned. It gave me, you know, light bulb hit. Did anybody else get it or question it? See, if you got it. You got it. So that would be interesting. You may have gotten it at your house and thrown it away. Okay.
Probably.
That, yeah. Yeah, I'm sure.
And I just wanted to call everyone's attention to this last, I think Bobby covered most of these. There is a flyer over there on the table. We are launching a new initiative for our smaller communities called Small Town Thrives. It's a peer-to-peer learning series and technical assistance. There's some information over there on the table. We will also circulate it out to the full executive board. That kickoff meeting is on the 30th of this month. And lastly, we did have a lot of turnover in our municipalities, in our boards with the election. And we think it's really important to invest in relationship building. So we are going to be hosting a breakfast for all newly elected officials to introduce them to Centralina in January. Would love it to have some of our executive board members come and talk about what we do and talk to your peers. So more information on that to come, but we just have to do more in terms of reaching your colleagues and sharing what we do in the region. So just wanted to make you aware of that.
Will that be here?
That will be here. And that's all I have.
Okay, before I adjourn, I just got one more thing I want to say. I think I'm the first chair to have a gavel up here. And I got this because that woman saw it across the way.
Because of her
Anyway.
or from her?
Yeah. So past chairs, when they, whatever they leave or something, they get a look at it, you know, I want to got land one time or something. So you get different things. I get this. Because I'm the first chair to have one of these things. And that's gonna be on my desk at home, thinking about all y'all, staff and all y'all, especially that one. Gonna have to calm people down. So at home, things get rowdy at home. Every time I pick it up and tap, I'm gonna think of each one of y'all.
All right. Have it at your family Thanksgiving dinner table.
Send us a picture.
Okay, that's all I'm gonna say about that. Reach the end of the agenda with no further business. I declare the meeting adjourned. All right. Thank y'all. Thank y'all so much. And those who want for still on. Thank y'all.
The offer still stands if anybody wants to go on.
Congressman McHenry.